All right. Welcome again to the fellowship. Good to see all you guys from all over, especially Seattle, Renton, the center of the world, Kansas City, Atlanta, and now we got Gig Harbor. Very excited to have Mike McCoy share. He was on here 5 or 6 weeks ago when Eddie Waxer joined and was telling us the history of ministry and sports, which he had been doing behind the scenes in his very Christ-like way, not wanting any of the glory for himself, but just pushing others and forward and pushing Jesus first. And Mike and Norm Evans and some other guys of that era got to be able to speak for Christ as athletes on a big stage and different things. And so Mike was there to honor Eddie, and now we have a chance for Mike to share. Mike's a friend of George Tolles, of course, who some of you guys know here, and he connected us. I'm trying to help him get to Seattle to speak to schools, which is what he does in his own ministry now. But
Catholic schools.
Yeah. We'll let you tell the story, and whatever part of the story you want, Mike, and the floor is yours for like a half hour, and then we'll all have a sort of more open discussion. Glad to have you here, brother. And we are recording especially today for George, who doesn't get up this early anymore, and Norm Evans, who wanted to be here but is also having some health challenges. So they want to see it later. So welcome, George and Norm. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Yeah, a special shout out to George Tolles and Norm Evans, and two of my very dear friends for many years. And I love Norm and Bobby and what God has done in their lives. Great to be with you this morning. I'm glad I didn't have to get up at 6 o'clock because I'm in Jefferson, Georgia, so I had a chance to sleep in a little bit this morning. Good to see some old friends, Rod Hanley, and new friends, and Don Schultz from Notre Dame. How about that? I'm the class of 70. That's how far back I go, Don.
89.
I played for Aero Parsegan. We won a national championship back there. Then, of course, 11 years in the NFL, and every joint replaced since then. So it's been an interesting journey physically and spiritually in my life. You know, we're at the eve of St. Patrick's Day, and I'm sure you know this, but you know, St. Patrick was not Irish. I don't know how many really realize that, but he was English. And he was captured by probably the Vikings or somebody. They captured him and took him to Ireland, and they put him in prison. And God miraculously broke him out of prison, and he went back to England, and he came back to Ireland as a monk. And that's the story of St. Patrick. So he was not Irish, he was English. And he didn't give her the snakes. I think there may not be snakes, but he's been told that he was the one, and I don't think he was the one. But so that's St. Patrick's Day is a very honored day, and unfortunately in our culture we abuse it, unfortunately.
Hey, Mike, sorry to interrupt real quick. I try not to do this, but we forgot to say Rick Ness. He a friend of yours as well?
Yeah, I don't know where he is.
Welcome, Rick.
Is he on the call?
Yeah, he's here. I don't know.
Okay, I can't see everybody, I guess, on my screen, right?
I know. Just want to acknowledge him. I think
Rick and
Don reached out to him again. The
Holy
Holy
freshmen
Spirit
at Notre Dame together and played football for years together.
Holy Spirit connects us all.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Enjoyed the time I had with Eddie, and it brought back some fond memories of Pro Athletes Outreach. 53 years ago, I was at the 50th anniversary of PAO, Pro Athletes Outreach, and I'm sure everybody on the call is familiar with PAO. And started by Athletes in Action, and they had a conference, and the mission statement of PAO was to reach out to professional athletes and their families and their wives to teach them how to live according to godly principles. And it was all connected with the chapel programs through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and Athletes in Action. And when I got into the league, 1970, and I always like to tell people it was BM, before money, because we all worked during the off season. And I got in the league, and there was a couple guys who really influenced my life. And you know, you look at mentors in our life, and people have influenced my life. And I'm gonna go back a little bit further, kind of give you my quick testimony, so it kind of ties in with everything that God's doing in my life, and has done and will do. And even at the age of 74, he's teaching me new things every day. And one of the things that came to my mind as we were speaking, as somebody was praying about what's going on in our country, I think about the verses of Matthew. It says, what do we build our life upon? If we build our life upon the sand, when the trials of tribulation of life come, and great will be that fall of that house. But if we build our life upon the rock, that relationship with Jesus Christ, when the trials and tribulation of life come, because they will come, and I've been in some good ones the last 9 months, some big ones for me, and that house will not fall because we built upon the relationship of Jesus Christ and how we relate to those things. And I always talk about going through a dark tunnel, but it's the valley of the shadow of death. There's always a light at the end of that tunnel. So that was an encouragement to me. And when the Spirit just put that into my mind, because I've been battling some adversity the last 9 months. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. My mom was Polish, my dad was Irish, and my mom was about 5'11", 170-pound Polish lady. My dad was 6'3", 240-pound Irish guy. And my dad made some bad choices in life. And unfortunately, we lost our home and had to move in with my grandparents when I was about 3rd grade. And unfortunately, my dad was an alcoholic, as was my grandfather. So I grew up in an alcoholic family. And so in 3rd grade, I turned to food. When I was in 5th grade, I was 5'5", 165 pounds in 5th grade. I was just a little fat kid. And a lot of people picked on me. And my mother used to tell me, Mihao, that's what she called me, Michael, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I say, Mom, they do hurt me, because my friends were really getting on me. And God blessed me some with athletic ability I didn't know I had. I started playing a little baseball and basketball. And then my freshman year in high school, I was at a seminary at St. Mark's Seminary studying to be a priest, because I thought God called me into that. And that was a very interesting year for me. I learned a lot, but I also learned that I wasn't cut out for that. And so God led me to Cathedral Prep High School. It was an all-boys Catholic school in Erie, Pennsylvania. There's 1,200 of us, coat and tie, academic excellence, athletic excellence. And that first mentor came into my life. The priest in my parish at St. John's were great people, helped me through that struggling time. But Tony Zambrowski went to University of Notre Dame, played under Frank Leahy, and he was my football coach. So I went out for football my sophomore year. I knew nothing. And through his guidance and his counsel, because he grew up in an alcoholic family, his dad was an alcoholic and his mom's dad is was an alcoholic. So he understood what I was going through. And I didn't understand all those things at that time. And he guided me to the University of Notre Dame. And I always had faith in my life. And my faith brought me comfort. The nuns and the priest and what I went through as an altar boy. I believed in God. I knew who Jesus Christ was. You go through those periods of doubting that, and you get through those when you're in college, and went to mass all the time. And but there was something empty. There was something missing, and I didn't know what that was. Went up to the Green Bay Packers. There was a guy named Terry Bradshaw was drafted ahead of me, and I was number 2. And I went up to the Packers, and a lot of pressure on me. Just got married. My wife, Kia, grew up in upstate New York, and her dad was transferred to Erie, Pennsylvania, and he was organic. He had his doctorate in organic chemistry, so he ran the lab for GE. And I always tell her she says, man, that was the worst time of my life. I said, well, wait a minute, you met me. So we have a laugh about that over the years. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2013, cancer. And we did get 42 great years in, though. And so I met her between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college, and she was going to be a senior in high school. So we met that summer. It was a blind date. And when she graduated from high school, she went off to skate for Ice Capades. That's how good she was. She was an ice figure skater, started when she was 5 years old. And so I went off to the University of Notre Dame and got drafted by the Packers. And then I met Carroll Dale and Bart Starr. And I've seen Bart Starr before. I knew who he was, heard him speak at a banquet in Erie, Pennsylvania many years ago. But Carroll Dale is my spiritual father. I like to call him that. And he was a wide receiver for the Packers. And we just became friends. He and his wife, Pat, kind of put us under our wings, and he invited me to come to chapel. I said, chapel? I said, what's that? I thought it was a log cabin in the woods. He said, no, it's a service on Sunday morning. Whoever wants to come can come. And it's open up to all denominations. And we usually have a speaker in who's usually a business person or a former pro athlete. So I figured, well, why not? I'll go to church on Saturday, because we travel with priests, because every team travels with a priest now, just about, and every team has chapel in the NFL. And if I have time, I'll tell you about Al Davis and the chapel program out in Oakland. Somebody remind me of that, Rod. You can remind me about that story. And got to pick up the pace here, because I know I only have an half hour. But that's a very important part of my life is Carol and Pat. And he invited me to come to chapel. So I went to church on Saturday night to fulfill my duty and obligation, went to chapel on Sunday, and I started listening to the message. And that basic message was that at some point in time in life, these men open up their hearts and ask Christ to come in their life. And a lot of them were in the same background, no matter what denomination they were in. And they were just going through the motions. They weren't really committed. It was a cultural thing for them. Me, it was a little more than a cultural thing, but I just never realized that I could do that. And may have heard of that growing up, but it went over my head. And so through that chapel program, I understood the basics of the gospel of Christ. And then Carol said, Mike, why don't you want to go to an FCA camp? It was in Mars Hill, North Carolina. It was June of 1971. I kind of knew what FCA was, didn't really understand it. But they flew us down there, and Del Shealy was the coach at Mars Hill at the time, and met some of the staff down there. And I had a group of huddle guys, and they gave me a booklet, and I was like 3 hours ahead of these kids of what was in that booklet. Learned a lot that week. And that Wednesday afternoon, oh gosh, I wish I could remember his name, because I know you all know him, and I know you know him too, Rod. He went to the University of Oklahoma. He was an All-American at Oklahoma. He was on FCA staff for many years. Anyhow, Bill Kreischer. So Bill Kreischer comes up to me on that particular Wednesday, and he says, Mike, why don't you speak to the group tonight? There's like 500 of these athletes there. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And they said, talk about what it means to be a Christian pro athlete. I said, sure, I can talk about that. And then it hit me. I was a religious person, but I didn't know if I was really a true follower of Christ. And so by myself, I prayed that simple prayer, opened up my heart to Christ, and there was no fireworks went off, but I just knew that he was in my life at that point in time, and still is. So that night, that's what I did. And so God took that and manifested that. And I came back to Green Bay, and I just saw the Jesus Revolution. I don't know how many of you have seen the Jesus Revolution, but that was my era, the 60s and 70s. And in 72, when they're in Dallas, that was actually Expo 72. They didn't tell that on the film, and Campus Crusade put that on, and there was 4 or 5 of us that were at that thing, and Ed Mooney and Dave Rowe and Norm Evans, and we were there for 4 or 5 nights at the Coliseum, and we went out and talked. And that Sunday, I spoke at the Rock Festival, and 250,000 people were there, and I just said, I can't do this. And Doc Eshman asked me to do it, and because one of the guys who was supposed to do it was sick. So I did it, and I was scared to death. I had no idea what I was going to say, but God gives us those words. And then went back to Green Bay and got involved in the chapel, got involved in our Bible study, went to church all the time, mass on when I could go, and spent 7 years with Green Bay, and they were great years, very challenging but great years. And the following year, my wife Kia opened up her heart to Christ. She was very, very religious, and she thought I was kind of crazy for a year, because I was starting to study the Bible and praying, and he says, well, you're not supposed to do that just on Sunday. And I said, well, I'm learning a lot of things. And so she went way far ahead of me spiritually in her life. And so then I was traded to the Oakland Raiders, and I felt a little bit bad about that. But Green Bay got a number 1 and number 4 and a player, and I was 7 years in the league. And I was going out to Oakland, and they just won the Super Bowl in January of 77. And Monty Johnson and Dave Rowe were out there, and they were 2 of my good friends from the PAO conference. And I got to know them through Pro Athletes Outreach. And they didn't have chapel at the time. And I said, well, how come they don't have chapel? He says, Al Davis won't let it. I said, really? So I said, okay, I prayed about it. And I said, I'm going to go up and talk to Al, because he just traded for me. He's not going to get rid of me. That's for sure. The first year, that would look pretty bad. And so I went up to see, and he was a tremendous guy. I really liked Al Davis. He has this era about him on the outside, but on the inside, he was incredible. And so I went up there, and I just told him my story, and he says, and I said, can we do chapel? And this is what he said to me. He says, Mike, he says, I don't like people coming from the outside. I want to keep it tight. So I'm kind of sitting there. So the Spirit just led me to say, well, what if we do it? And he goes, what do you mean we? I said, the players. He says, okay. So that following Sunday, we had 23 players and 4 coaches come to chapel. And later on, he actually hired a full-time chaplain, I understand, in Oakland. And then I was traded up to New York, and they had a elderly pastor. Unfortunately, he was kind of towards the end of his influence in the team. And Steve Newman was also chaplain in Green Bay that I helped get in there. And then I went up there, and Dave Bratton was with Athletes in Action, and he ended up being the chaplain through a couple of us going to the Giants and having Dave Bratton installed. So that's kind of a quick overview of my story. And I think Pro Athletes Outreach was a credible influence in my life. And the Eddie Waxer and the Paul Eshelmans that I met, and the players and we're still close with 4 or 5 of them, those of us that are left, because we're kind of at this point in time in life. And we formed a committee, and it was interesting because Arliss Priest, who was behind the scenes, he was one of the guys helping organize it as a business, and we have 4 or 5 businessmen. And so they wanted a 12-man committee, and they asked us to put in $5,000. I said, $5,000 to be on this committee to help organize? We didn't have a name yet, because we had FCA guys and we had AA guys, and we wanted to be an outreach of pro to pro. And then whoever the pros wanted to go and speak, that was up to them. So there's a little bit of competition even back then. And, when you make $35,000 a year, that was my salary in 1972 in the NFL. $5,000 was a lot of money. But by faith, we went ahead and we all did it. And so we were behind the scenes for a couple of years and formed Pro Athletes Outreach, and it's still out there today. And it doesn't get a lot of attention. It's not meant to, and it's influenced many, 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 many families, and spread throughout all different ministries because of PAO and the work they're doing now. And they're still doing it. So PAO was really big. FCA was really big in my life, understanding Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And when I got out of football, I was living in Atlanta. I was living in Erie, and moved to Atlanta in '89. Got involved in FCA in our little high school, and it was just a tremendous experience for me. And ended up getting involved in the business world in the early '80s. In '86, I got a call from a guy named Doc Eshelmans, who was Paul Eshelman's dad, and he was forming an organization called Sports World. And he wanted to take the former NFL athlete into schools because he saw what was happening culturally in our land. And so my wife and I prayed about it, and I was involved in a couple things. And so I got out of those, and she went to work at a bank to help and became a teller. And most of our kids were, I only had 1 child in 3rd grade at the time. The rest of them were a little bit older. I had 4 children, I had 15 grandchildren now, and 3 are in heaven. And so off I went, and I spent 3 years with Sports World, and I parted ways. Doc says, it's time to go on. I said, okay, Doc, 1 door closes and 1 door opens. And then I spent 19 years on Bill Glass's staff, which is a prison ministry. So Rod, I'm very interested in show me the Father and who's involved with that. That sparked a little thing in my spirit. And I learned a lot from Bill, how to run a ministry. I was involved in prison ministry, involved in juvenile detention centers, involved in going into schools and training pros. And it was just incredible 19 years. And then I started going into Catholic schools almost within a year after I was on Bill Glass staff because of my background. And we do assemblies in those Catholic schools. But then, 2008, 2009, the downturn hit. I'm 60 years old, and Bill had to get rid of, 40, 50% of the staff within a month because our funds were drying up. And I got let go, middle management. I was asked to run the organization a few times, says that's not my gift. And my gift is to be out there and not to be in an office. And I said, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do now? And I'll never forget this. I was sitting in a parking lot in Marin County at a Catholic school that I organized through Bill Glass's umbrella at that time. And I'm sitting there, and I said, Lord, I knew it was going to happen, that we're going to get laid off. They didn't tell us, but you just sense things like that. And I knew it was coming to an end. I said, what do you want me to do? And I've never really heard a audible voice in my life, but I heard one that day. You had that sense of the Spirit. And he says, go into Catholic schools. And I turned around. I thought somebody was in the back seat. I said, what? because I did say, I said, it'd be pretty cool if I could just do Catholic schools when I got done with this thing. And then 11 years later, we have Mike McCoy Ministries that reaches students in Catholic schools with the message of faith, hope, and encouragement. We do that through assemblies. Grades 3 through 5 is the value and worth of a person through God's eyes, because we know that in this culture today, these young people are getting their worth from their friends, from the culture, from the little iPhones and Androids and computers, and even if they come from good families, I don't care who you are, black, white, red, green, purple, no matter what your background is, these young people are at risk, and we're seeing it all the time. And we just got done with that CDC report and how many young girls are depressed and suicidal in our culture today, more so than ever. So we're seeing the results of our culture. So then we have grades 6 through 12 as decisions determine our destiny. And then we do comment cards with the older folks, with the older students. And, it's amazing. I have about 5 minutes at the end of the assembly. I see, did you like the program? Did you open your heart to Christ? What's one thing that's going on in your life that if you could change? And then I have a Book of Proverbs club. And that fourth one, which is one thing that's going on, that because I read some comment cards from other students towards the end, and I cover all the subjects, and they pour out their hearts, and it's a God thing. And then with the suicide and depressions and addictions, and we see it all even in the Catholic schools, we network with the local counselors in the schools, and seed planter. It's basically what it is. And I have to keep statistics, and the last 11 years, I was just looking at them yesterday for a friend of mine, and I said, geez, Lord, it's amazing what you're doing. And, Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified on the cross with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So it's not me, it's Christ working through us. It's called that exchange life. And that was a big one for me. And understanding grace was another big turning point for me. That I had to do something. I don't have to do anything. It's Christ working through me. We found over 430 students in the last 11 years have indicated they had suicidal thoughts and suicidal tendencies. Depressions are out the roof. And one of the things I've heard the last 2 years since COVID is their biggest problem that these principals are dealing with, and now again, these are Catholic schools, is mental health. Biggest problem. The depressions, the anxiety, the suicide things, they're just overwhelmed. And a lot of them had no counselors on, and they're hiring counselors now just to deal with the kids in their life. And so I've been doing that, and that's been a real pleasure in my life. Everything I've done has been a pleasure, but this one is really, really, I love what I do, that God has called me to do this. And even at the age of 74, I kind of feel like Caleb a little bit. Matter of fact, one of my only son is named Caleb, and he was kind of like, when I got out of the league, my wife Kia says, "What? You're pregnant?" I said, "How did that happen?" I said, "We're not in the league anymore." And he's been a joy, a challenge, but a joy, if you know what I mean. And then my wife put away the skates at age 25, and at the age of 60, she put them on again. And her sister encouraged her to skate in what is called these international ice figure skating competitions, age appropriate. So she went into training, got some new skates, and they went around. They had 3 different areas. They went to France, Germany, and Ireland. And they skated, and they had a ball. It was a girl thing in our family. And I remember in April of 2012, I was watching her skate in Italy, and it was streamed at that time. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go. I want to go, next time." Well, unfortunately, it wasn't the next time. In May of 2012, she was skating to Amazing Grace in Germany and won that, and had a little sore on her thigh inside. Something was hurting her. I said, "You're 64 years old. Fine, you're going to be sore." Well, it turned out to be a tumor, turned out to be sarcoma. And she lived her life in grace and dignity. And in March of 2013, March 23rd, she passed on to the next life in grace and dignity. And that was a big turning point for me, big. And I've been dealing with that and other issues in the last 7 years that God has worked in me and shown me, and show me where, there's some dark areas in my life that he has taken me to the woodshed these past 7 months, and it's been hard, but it's also been freeing. And see, one quick story, and then I'll quit because I know I've got time limit here. But when she first started, her first her first skating, it was in France with her sister, and she bought this clock, and it was just a clock that was you put it on your dresser, and it was round and had a round. It was just gold. It wasn't very ornate, but it was French. Didn't work, and so we had it in our master bedroom for 2.5 years. So when all this happened and she's being removed, and I went to the workout facility. A friend of mine came over there, and we sat and talked, and my sister took care of the room and took care of cleaning everything up. And she came back and says, "Mike, look at the clock." I said, "Monica, the clock never worked." So when she passed away, I had to call it in, so to speak, and it was 5:01 in the morning. And I looked at the clock, and the clock said 5:01 that she got 3 years earlier that didn't work. And so we had so many signs from God. And she journaled. We didn't understand how much she journaled, but she journaled. My son found journal after journal. So one of our friends says, "Why don't you write a book?" I said, "No." So my son ended up writing a book called Angel on Ice, and he put in a website called Angel on Ice, and you can go there today to see credible story of how we battle cancer and how she battled cancer. And it's called angelonice.com, and you'll be blessed by doing that. So anyhow, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it, Ben.
Love it, Mike. Thank you, man. Thank you. I was getting chills when you're talking about, you said the last 7 months, God's been showing you new things, teaching you new things. And our speaker last week said almost the exact same thing. In fact, 8 months, he said, and he's been a believer for 3 or 4 decades also. It's amazing how God keeps bringing us to new levels.
Absolutely. Through adversity. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So Denny was reminding me, and I have this book I read multiple times, Prison to Praise. It says, so in everything, give thanks, or give thanks for everything. It's somehow God is using it all.
Yeah. We may not totally understand it now, but every time I look back, when you hit those trials and tribulations of life, and you look back and say, "Oh, okay, I see it now." And sometimes we don't see it when we're involved in it, but that's where faith comes in. And teach me a lot about trust in the Lord with all thy heart. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, lean not only on understanding, but all his ways acknowledge him. And that was my wife's Kia's favorite verse. And it had to be because we moved like 22 times. And had a lot of changes, career changes in my journey.
You're like a military man. I mean, being in the NFL kind of makes a band of brothers feels like the military.
Mike, the university level, we have Gonzaga right here in Spokane. We have Seattle U here in our own city that we're praying for. Have you had much involvement at that level with the athletes?
I have not. I travel. I don't travel as much as I used to because COVID slowed us down with these schools, obviously. So just starting to pick up a little bit this last year and a half. And I have not had the time or the calling, I think, to deal with athletes on a day-to-day basis like some people have. And who knows, that may be in my future once the doors are closed with these Catholic schools. I don't know. But right now, my board has asked me, they said, "How long are you going to do this?" I said, "Till either God calls me home or the market dries up." And so they said, "Well, who's going to take your spot?" I said, "Nobody." I said, "I don't want to hire a staff person and raise funds for that staff person and find somebody who can do what I can do." And I told my board, I said, "When I'm done, I'm done. It's up to you guys what you want to do. If you want to go out and search for another person to do what I did." So not that I'm special or anything, but I just, and I had staff people when I was with Bill Glass Ministries, and like what Eddie said, he said, "I'm by myself. I'm a one person, and that's what I am now. I do all the marketing, and I do all the fundraising, and I do all the speaking, and I do all the planning, and my board helps a little bit. CPA helps me a little bit, keeps me organized bookkeeping wise, so I don't have to deal with that. So it's just me, and I'm fine with that right now.
Well, if we ever get you to Seattle, we'll introduce you to Eduardo, who's the president at Seattle U. He's shared with us in this prayer room forum, and our heart says that it's the collegiate level that really is in need of spiritual support, even though they are at universities that are funded by the church.
Right. So Seattle University is a Christian school?
It's Catholic Christian all the
Oh,
way.
Catholic. Oh, if you want to
Jesuit.
bring me out for that, I'd be happy to do that. I've spoken at Notre Dame a couple of times, so I have done some collegiate. But I'm going to tell you what I'm finding right now. These kids that are in middle school, if
Yes.
we can get them now, because by the time they get to high school, it's pretty tough, and by the time they get to college, it's very tough. Now, God can work. There's no doubt about that. But
Well,
I have contacted a couple people that Ben has given me that are in the Diocese of Seattle, and I just emailed them a couple of days ago. So y'all can pray for that, because I'd love to come out to Seattle. I've got some great friends that I can visit. But we were in Seattle with Athletes in Action a couple of times, and Tacoma, we did a big outreach with Athletes in Action years ago, and I'd love to come back out there. So pray about that I can come out there and do some Catholic schools.
Let's stay in touch, because we have Holy Names as an incredible high school, Catholic high school.
Yeah.
Very involved in athletics,
Yes.
but we want you to meet the president of Seattle University. We'll help coordinate that.
Yeah. Well,
So
you
it
can get to Ben. He's got all my contact information.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to need athletics, Christopher, anymore. You're just talking to the
I do the whole school assembly.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's McCoy77.com. That's my pitch. McCoy77.com.
Now, I didn't know you did some prison ministry. We got a couple folks on here that are have a deep heart for prison ministry, and that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah, when Bill hired me, I said, I don't want to do prisons. He goes, okay, you just run the youth program. And 2 weeks later, he calls me up to Birmingham, Alabama. He said, well, why don't you come up for the weekend? I said, okay, I'm just hired, so I better do what Bill says, So I went up there, and there was a first prison we went into. I don't remember this young man's name, but he played at the University of Alabama. He was a huge kid, and he got drafted by the Bengals, and he was either bipolar or he was on drugs or something, and he robbed a gas station with a rubber gun, and they tried to find him, and then he finally was hanging with the wrong people, and he got shot. So he ended up getting arrested, and he was at this prison. And I saw him at a PAO conference like 2 years earlier. He was in this prison. He said, Mike, this prison saved my life. I said, really? I said, wow. So that I got hooked on prison ministry, the way Bill does it. Yeah, it's incredible. Bill has passed on, as you all know. Bill Glass passed on a couple of years ago, but they're still out there. It'd be a great connection, Rod, with the contacts and the networking that Bill has all over the country with this. I guess you can see it on streaming. Show Me the Father. You can stream it, I believe.
Rod, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Amazon Prime, you can see it there. And
Amazon Prime. Okay.
Yeah, just and it's at one point it was the number one stream movie, and it is just super powerful and super great. And Mike, let me just say, it just warms my heart that you've stayed in your lane and you have been so faithful to proclaiming the truth in all these settings. And I'm just overjoyed. And at age 74, you still got energy and passion and a drive to, put yourself in front of kids. And, it's a different generation. So I'd be curious, what do you see from this generation? I mean, I'm seeing a spiritual hunger. They're looking for
they want to know the truth.
The world is just not giving them satisfaction. So give me your take on that, what you see right now.
Well, I think you're right. I think what's happening is they've seen what's going on in the United States. They're seeing what's going on in our world. They had the COVID. They had the drugs come in. They've tried all this stuff, and it's not fulfilling to them. And they just want to know the truth. So when I go into the schools, I think I'm going to tell you the last 5 or 6 years, the fruit has been incredible. And I was trying to think, they may look at me like as a grandfather, because I do talk about, I got 15 grandkids. And you know how kids are with their grandparents. They're probably closer to some of their grandparents than they are their parents. And of course it's a God thing too. There's no doubt about that. But I think you're right, Rod. It's the hunger for the truth. And they've been told so many lies in their life, even though they may be Catholic or they may be some other faith, but they're just overwhelmed with this culture because it's a day-to-day thing they're involved with.
Yeah.
If you go to church on Sunday, you go to youth group maybe on Wednesday night, but if it's not there every day, that relationship, understanding the relationship, and they have relationships, but some of them are good, some of them are bad. And then when I talk about the relationship with Jesus Christ, that really hits a bell with them.
Yeah.
Mike, if you don't mind, maybe share a story or two from your experience working with these kids in terms of, some transformation story or something.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I have so many of them, but one comes to mind. I was in Buffalo and I was in Orchard Park, which is a very nice area of Buffalo. And I grew up in Erie, so I know the area fairly well. And I went to this middle school, got done with my program. It was in grade 6 through 8. And I had the cards I collected the cards and I looked at them, saw a few things, went back to my room, and I'm digging in my bag and I find this card. And I'm just going to give a name to this young lady, Jennifer. She says, I smoke and drink almost every weekend. I cut myself and I want to commit suicide. How do I do that? I said, whoa. And I had a lot of those cards, unfortunately. So I called the sister the next day and I said, Sister Joan, I said, I got this card. Here's this young lady's name. Oh, Mike, she's really a nice girl. No problem. I said, I understand that. But I said, I got this card and here's what she says. And I said, this is your sister. We've got a law situation here that if you don't intervene in this girl and something happens, we're both liable. Because that has happened with a friend of mine when he was in Sports World. He wasn't liable, but the principal was. And the girl committed suicide that night and he didn't follow up on it right away. So she said, gotcha. So I took a little picture, sent it to her. They took her out of class and she admitted what she was doing. Her parents were corporate people, both working full time and very busy. And they just moved there. She was lost. And so they got into family counseling. Her mom quit her job and they had to do what they had to do to save their family. And this young lady graduated from a Catholic high school and I assume from that, she got some help, and I assume she's still doing very well, but I knew that she went to a local Catholic high school, did very well. And I've got a lot of those stories. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great story.
But then I have also stories where kids were encouraged and want to make changes. They're starting to go down different paths. And he said, I don't want to go down that path. I want to go down the path that you have gone down. Plenty of those stories too. Yeah. And there are some great kids out there too, by the way. I mean, we kind of talk about the negative, but there is a remnant that's still out there that's really doing well. I went to an FCA meeting on Sunday up in Jackson County. I'm in Jefferson, Georgia now. And there's like 1,000 kids came to this thing. And FCA has a huddle group in every middle school and high school in Jackson County and in Jefferson, Georgia area. So a lot of great ministries out there. Youth for Christ. There's a Catholic ministries called Unbound, and the son of this guy who started it, and it's a deliverance ministry, and it's really very powerful. And he had been at it for 20, 25 years and talks about spiritual warfare and how to get unbound from that. And boy, do I know about spiritual warfare, don't we all? And he went to a Young Life meeting and accepted Christ, and came back and got involved with his dad in the Catholic ministry of Unbound. And he was a very powerful speaker. YouTube Unbound, if you ever want to go, it's incredible.
We got our local Youth for Christ leader right here.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw him about 3 weeks ago, the young man. Everybody's younger than I am now.
Hey,
Probably
Ben,
everybody here. I may be
Hey.
the oldest one on the call. Maybe not. I don't know.
Who's that? Go ahead.
that's Marvin.
Marvin, of course.
Marvin.
Peace.
Hey, I had an experience this past weekend, and I want to share it, and but I don't know what to do about it. So my youngest kid at home is 14 years old. She's in the 8th grade, so she'll be in high school next year, and she wanted to go to the mall with a couple of her friends, and so my wife and I played chaperone. I was kind of tricked into this one because she said we're going to the mall shopping, but we obviously didn't do any shopping. We were just chaperoning, and there was about 5 kids with us. I paid for them to go see the movies, which then my wife and I didn't go to the movies. We just sat in an area in the mall and just watched. There were thousands and thousands of kids at this mall, South Center. None of them had shopping bags or anything. They were just all hanging out, and I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I'm an ordained minister of the gospel, so I know the Bible, I know the word, I know everything. But when you see these kids on this road to destruction, you can't just pop in their way. And how do you direct that? I think I got an idea, because we assembled some guys together for Cubs. We're working on a program right now. I run a fathering program here in town, but how do you impact those? And I think this question is for you. How do we impact that? Because you see how wide the road is, and you see how many kids are headed in the wrong direction. How do you interfere in that? How do you? I know we have these wonderful programs, but what about these kids who are not connected to programs or schools? And I mean, I don't know. I was just touched in the wrong way. So I'm throwing a question. Maybe it can't be answered, but
No, that's a good question. They are those teens. Mike, you want to speak to what do you say to them that makes them open up to you on the cards, or
Well,
start?
I do an hour, 50-minute program. To do my program in a mall is difficult. You can maybe pass out some tracks or just strike up a conversation with some of them. They're sitting there, and the Spirit will lead, and the Spirit draws. So it's never about us. It's always about how the Spirit will lead people to you. Maybe you can do a big rally at the mall one Saturday afternoon and bring in a rock band, like we used to do Athletes in Action many years ago, and power lifters and stuff. But yeah, that's just a thought that came into my mind. Yeah, I tell them, the mistakes I've made, and then the mistakes some of their friends have made. I'm wearing a mask. On the outside, I seem bubbly, but on the inside, I'm depressed and terrible. And so again, it's not what I say; it's what Christ is saying, the Spirit is saying through me. And sometimes I said, "Man, I did a terrible job today. Didn't feel like I was at it and in it." And then you read the cards, and I said, "Oh my gosh," and the response. So it's all about forgiveness, and I talk about that with the young people too. We look at the Our Father. We forgive those who offended us as we forgive those that we have offended, and we need a lot more forgiveness in our lives. And that's one of the things that God is teaching me the last 9 months. Not only forgiving myself, but forgiving those around me.
Thank you. If you're ever this way, though, I sure would like to take you to a trip to the mall. Okay.
Yeah, I'll wear my Green Bay Packer jersey.
Hey, Mike,
I've done a few of those in the past. That's one of the things we did with PAO, and to go out and share. And another thing that just came into my mind, Jeff Seaman's wife, Dawn, beautiful lady from Hawaii, gorgeous, great lady. We got to know her through PAO, and her first PAO conference, she Jeff and Dawn and Kia and I, and then we had somebody from Athletes in Action or FCA go with us or whatever. We had a group of 4 or 5. And so we're just going to go out and share in a park. And I said, geez, Don, there's this kind of like, looks like a homeless guy sitting over there. I said, oh, I can't do this. Like, hey, just go sit next to her. And she did. And the Spirit just opened her up, shared with this man. She came back, and it was like a rose opening up. And she was so excited that she shared her faith. And it's the first time she's ever done that. And yeah, so it's pretty interesting. You know, some people like you got to write a book, but I forgot half the things that happened in my life. So 74. Oh, okay. That one I just remembered.
Well, Marvin has a brand new podcast studio, professional studio in his offices there. And I'm trying to bring Mike out here to speak to schools in this area, and Marvin will bring him in. You can interview him on your podcast.
Does anybody have any good connections with the superintendent of the Catholic school system or principals?
Well,
those principals are really the key, because I've gone through few superintendents, but they don't like to get involved with it. It's up to the schools. Then schools have their own rules and regulations about bringing speakers in.
yeah.
So I've passed all the tests, and I go to Our Lady of the Peace here in Jacksonville, and I go to 12 Stones. So I do both.
Hey, can I say something real quick?
Mike, welcome on, brother.
Yeah. So Marvin, your question, you don't know this, but your question is confirmation of something that I've been praying about. Because I don't know, right before the MLK prayer breakfast, I was at South Center Mall, walking around, and had the same experience that you just spoke of. And I'm sitting there thinking, and out of nowhere, one of my homies walks up, and he works there at the mall, and he has this in the mall like outreach deal going on. He's not calling it outreach, but it sounds like outreach to me. When they're interacting with kids and the young people there, and if anyone gets caught stealing, they have this program where they get to, instead of sending them to jail or anything like that, they work with the kids, right? And so. But I was like, hey, man, is it possible for us to like set up shop at the mall and do something as Youth for Christ, or just as a ministry? He was like, man, there's a guy on my team that wants ministry here so bad, right? And so all I have to say is, man, this has been something I've been praying on, and something I've been wanting to do for a minute, man. And so I would love to get with you, Marvin, just to at least, even just to touch and connect in prayer on this. So I think something is bubbling, and we're working on a deal right now to minister to those young folk at the mall. Because you're right, there's like thousands of them, and none of them have bags. They're not shopping, they're just hanging out. And to me, I love that. I'm like, man, you know what? This is where the culture is at, And so what would it look like to be planted? And you know how I am about presence, the theology of presence is where how you get things done in the spirit, And so us just being present in that space. And so, man, just you saying that, literally, I'm over here, I'm in Orlando right now. So I'm like, want to hop on the plane and get right back to get this thing cracking, man. And so, but thanks for that question, Mike, brother. Like, yeah.
Mike, come see me if you get a chance. I'll stop whatever I'm doing. There were thousands of kids, and I'm watching. I have 4 boys and 4 girls, and I'm watching these girls probably left out of the house with their coats zipped up to their neck.
Yeah.
Mall, they came out, they're half clothed, and you could just see the no direction. And as a father of a 14-year-old, I can't lose, because she's got 3 sisters, and they're on her like,
right.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So let's do that, because I have such a prick in my heart about what these are the future of good or bad, depending on which choice they make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let's add a choice to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got you. As soon as I get back, I'm gonna reach out, man. But yeah, we're gonna change the game in this area, man, because that right there is the devil's playground, man. And you know how it is. We all about stepping all up on his ground, man, and running that and planting the flag of Christ in that space.
Man.
And Yeah, so there's vision behind what you're saying, man. And so anyway, you just got my heart running like crazy right now. Like I could probably run to Seattle from Orlando, how excited I am right now. So
Well,
yeah,
hey,
man,
There you
let's
go. The
do it.
spirit's
do that.
moving.
Don't do that. We need all your energy when you get back here, okay?
Hey, Mike, I just saw yesterday I had this amazing day, bunch of miracles. And one of them was just walking in and Marvin welcomed me in, showed me his new studio, doing podcasts, thinking of new things to do. It was awesome. I'm just picturing now, you know, a pop-up store in the middle of the mall, how they have, instead of selling jewelry or T-shirts, you could have Youth for Christ and dads, someone manning the post there, talking to people as they go by. And it is all, like you said, presence and, like Mike said, relationship. And you got to be there. And yeah, the kids have nobody at home when they're going home, people working all day long. They might have all the money they need, but nobody's at home. Rod, tell us who's coming here on April 6th from Kansas City that he said he knows Mike Davis.
Yeah, Damian Cooper is going to be in the house that day, and cannot wait for. And Mike, he actually has met you at a birthday party of a mutual friend. He said years ago, but Damian's on my team, 28 years old, and just doing amazing things for Jesus here in our city. And then Banked, you and I are working on getting another KC guy here. Dan Mears, KC Wolf is, we're looking at dates right now. Mayor, yeah, the mascot of the Chiefs, May or June as his delivery date. And then we're also working on a former KC guy named Kerry Casey. Kerry's a dear friend from my FCA days. In fact, Mike, you probably recognize Kerry's name as well. And Kerry is a retired pastor out of Chicago, living there now, but his son Marcellus Casey is the current chaplain for the Chiefs.
Wow.
So pretty cool legacy, pretty cool ministry that, so you guys are going to get overwhelmed with a lot of KC guys coming up here soon.
I know
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I know Kerry Casey personally. He used to be the CEO of the National Center for Fathering out of Kansas.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly who Kerry is. And he was also he was the primary chaplain of the Seoul Olympics back in 1988. So he's been around a long time and has an amazing ministry story. So real fun to introduce you guys to some of my dear friends.
That would be great. It's a small world. We're all here, the big network of the Holy Spirit. Marvin, were you on here? I did announce we got Dad's banquet coming up June 16. Everybody sign up.
Yeah. Thank you,
Get your
Ben.
card. They got the best website. It's just called About Dads.
Yep.
aboutdads.org. Helping fathers be fathers. It's all, yeah. If you have not seen anybody on here, Show Me the Father, go watch Show Me the Father as well.
First time I ever heard of it. Amazing.
Oh man, you're in for a treat. And wasn't Sherman growing up in Ohio somewhere, Rod?
Yep. Well, that's he was born in Youngstown and played football at Miami of Ohio. And Mike, do you remember Sherman with the Seattle Seahawks and all that? So yeah, I'll make sure that you and Sherman get connected, and also you and Deland will get connected. And they're both in the movie. Eddie George is in the movie. Dr. Tony Evans is in the movie.
Wow.
So yeah, you'll just be walking around going, I know all these people. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm putting the notes right now, Mike. After you watch it, you call me. I've given you my cell number and email, and we'll do some strategizing. Because
I'm going to be at Notre Dame for the Legacy Weekend.
Oh, I know. That's
April
perfect
20th
weekend to go.
to the 23rd.
Yep. There's a good chance Sherman will be there too, to support his son. So yeah, we'll get you.
Yeah,
connected.
if I can meet Delon at that time, that'd be incredible.
Yep.
Awesome. And Sherman's on the East Coast. I think he's in Tennessee now.
He's in Nashville. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we're hitting the time moment, 8:12. I feel like Marvin, can you pray over Mike McCoy and all of us and everything? Our heart is, so proud, praising God for all his blessings, and also breaking our heart with young people.
Yes.
Laurie and Julie, glad to join us.
Yeah, I most certainly can.
Thank you. Love your testimony. Thank you so much for being there and sharing, and your heart for kids. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Marvin, give us a prayer.
Amen. Father, we come before your presence with bowed down heads and bowed down hearts, saying thank you for the gift of your son, Jesus the Christ, who, if it had not been for him, oh, where would we be? I repeat, oh, where would we be? But because of him, we today all have a right to the tree of life, to you, to what you have laid out for us. Now, my prayer today that we all keep our hands on the plow that our speaker talked about, how we can help these children in our communities keep their feet on the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Help us keep our hands to the plow. Help us show how we can reach out and touch them. Because you said in your word that least we come like them, we can't enter in. So how do we help them? Lord, we need an answer from you. Show us. I saw thousands of kids this past weekend. And it's only because of you that my child wasn't part of them. So God, thank you. Thank you for the work that is being done through these ministers and ministries. But we know that we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. So show us, lead us, guide us, help us, point us to where we should be. And I promise you, you will get all the glory and all the honor for everything that is done in your name. That would be my prayer. Now bless these fine folks that you have under the sound of my voice. Give them preaching power, give them ministry power, give them everything they need to do thy will. And again, I promise you, you will get all the glory from it. In Jesus' name we pray. And all God, amen.
Amen.
Great to be
Amen.
with everybody.
Amen.
And thank you, Marvin. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
good
Mike,
day.
for your sharing. Great job. Keep up the good
Rutendo.
work.
Good morning, sister. Who invited you?
Rutendo and Terry.
Still here? Just curious. Love that you're here. There you go. Trying to get my mic.
She's muted.
Everybody needs a
You're
mic.
muted. I don't know if you're trying to talk, Rutendo or Terry.
Hello, I'm sorry, sir. I couldn't find my mic.
There it
I
is.
was
There it
invited
is.
by Pastor Harvey Drake from
Oh.
Rainier Church. Yes.
Nice.
Yes,
Harvey's a
yeah.
good friend. Marvin and I were just talking about him, and he's going to be retiring soon, unfortunately, for
Yes.
us. Good for his family.
And yes, Dan is the one who introduced us to Harvey, and then Pastor Harvey invited us to
Okay,
this
Salvation Army. I thought. I wondered
Salvation
if
Army.
Dan-
Yes. Sorry, I
Dan
couldn't
had a
find
hand.
I couldn't find my mic.
So glad you're here.
Thank you so much. We're so excited.
Excellent.
We
Come
need to
back.
pray
We're
for
here. Same link.
Pastor Harvey too. He's up at the Church Awakening conference up at Westgate Chapel today and tomorrow. So that's
Okay.
so remember to pray for them up there as well.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see you. Please come back again. We're here at the same time every week.
Will
Hope
do.
that
Thank you
You'll
so
join
much.
us again.
I don't know where you're from, but it sounds like I just am meeting a pastor on the east side of Presbyterian Church who's from Rwanda, and I'm going to try to get him to speak. He's helping a lot of refugees in the area from
That's
Congo,
awesome.
Rwanda.
Yeah, that's great. Yep. We're originally from Zimbabwe, Africa. We came here 23 years ago.
Wow. Excellent.
And we've worked for the Salvation Army for 23 years.
Wow. Great.
Already.
We're
Thank you.
Okay. See you.
Yes. Bye.